to come from the bowels of hell.
The Dana Gould Hour.
Jungle worms and swamp rats run around your feet.
I bought a dog that killed the calf, that ate the canary. What is truth?
And once again, welcome back.
Hello, and welcome to the Dana Gould Hour podcast. Fasten your fun belts. We are blasting off yet again. For this episode, we are joined by two legends. You heard me. Legends. Mark Frost, a legend. He is a writer. First in television, he started out on The $6 Million Man, moved on to Hill Street Blues, co-created a little show called Twin Peaks with David Lynch. He's written motion pictures. He's directed motion pictures. He wrote and directed the film Storyville. He wrote the 2005 Fantastic Four and its sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer. And he has a new book out, a novel, entitled American Sphinx, which it's a historical novel, and it tells the story of FDR from the days just prior to America's entry into World War II up through his death, through the eyes of Frost's own relative, his great-uncle, Will Hasset, who worked for FDR as a speechwriter and press attaché, one might say. Mr. Frost and I cover a lot of topics and a lot of ground. I was thrilled to be able to talk to him. He's somebody that I always have wanted to talk to. I was really lucky and very grateful that I got the opportunity. Thank you, Mark Frost. He is here today, joined by, in our second interview, Gary Rhodes. Gary, I have a lot of books by Gary Rhodes before I ever met or spoke to him. He is a writer and film historian. He's written, among many other titles, a multi-volume set on the strange life and career of Bela Lugosi. He's written about Ed Wood. He wrote the book Horror at the Drive-In, Essays in Popular Americana, and he has an excellent new book out from Feral Press entitled Weirdumentary, Ancient Aliens, Fallacious Prophecies, and Mysterious Monsters from 1970s Documentaries. Before streaming, before cable, before the History Channel, before the show Ancient Aliens, these topics were explored in documentaries that were shown at your local Cineplex, many produced by the late, great Sun Classic Pictures. UFOs, Elvis, Bigfoot, they were all there, and they are all here in the pages of Gary's new book, Weirdumentary, and we're going to talk about them. As for me, bunch of stuff going on. Hanging with Dr. Z is gearing up for a fourth season, and we're doing our next live show here in Los Angeles on August 2nd at Dynasty Typewriter. So if you're in Southern California, come on out. It will be filmed, it will be streamed, and you can follow me or Hanging with Dr. Z on Instagram and Facebook and stay up to date on all of that nonsense. It's simply Dana Gould or Hanging with Dr. Z on Instagram, and I think it automatically goes over to Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I'm busy. I can't. I'm trying to keep up with all my shows. For details and links to all of these and more, please go to the live appearance page at danagould.com. Lastly, thank the Lord. This program is brought to you by you. Oh, sure, you may hear a couple of spot ads here and there, but the show has always relied on its listeners for support, and we never fail to appreciate you. And so, if you are not one already, please consider becoming a Dana Gould Hour Sky Cadet. If you like the show, go to danagould.com and sign up for our Patreon. $5 a month. You get some extra audio stuff, some video stuff, and some other junk. Earlier this month, I appeared at the LA Breakfast Club, which is a weekly, I think, speech engagement here in Los Angeles. People come and talk. They have breakfast and they talk. I gave a 40-minute talk on my friendship with Mylon Ermey. If you want to see it, hear it, it's on my Patreon. I don't have graduated levels. $5 a month. I'm not going to, for $17.50, I'm not going to come to your house 3 times a month and comb the nits out of your dog. $5 a month. and you get some stuff. Don't be a shy cadet. Be a sky cadet. It's a simple deal for complicated times. And now, it's on to our filthy business.
Tune in, it's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour podcast.
The Dana Gould Hour. Free and worth it.
It's a sunny, warm, sun-dappled day high atop the Mulholland Drive view shelf here in sunny Southern California, the People's Republic of California, in the former United States. And my guest today, we got a real guest today. We spent the money and got a good one. He's somebody that I've known of for a long time. He's a legendary TV writer from a TV writer's perspective. Started out on, I believe, Hill Street Blues, if I'm not mistaken.
Even before that, the $6 Million Man.
The $6 Million Man. I can $6 Million Man you into a bloody pulp.
You probably can.
And then so many mad scientists' lairs that were storage facilities in Chatsworth. And then Hill Street Blues co-created Twin Peaks, and then went on to wrote and directed the film Storyville, and has a new novel out. It's a historical novel called The Yankee Sphinx, about FDR and his press secretary, William Hasset.
He had a number of capacities he worked in for him, including correspondence, personal appointments for 12 years, from 34 to 45. Right.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the book. I wasn't planning, but I have to get into the $6 Million Man since you threw that down.
My own damn fault.
Did you own Leisure Suit stock? Was that like part of the deal to get into that?
No, we were required to wear one in the writer's room.
There was an era of leisure suits and turtlenecks like no other.
How he could do all those superpowers while wearing one is still one of the mysteries of the 70s. What I loved about it so much is that I'm that age. I'm that age. And even if it was a live action shot, if he was on a security monitor, he would be in slow motion on the security, which was great. But I remember when he fought John Saxon as the other Bionic Man, and that was like one of the greatest television moments I've ever seen. Ultimate Smackdown. Yeah.
How old were you writing on? I
started when I was 19. I think I did 2 or 3 episodes in 74 into 75. I was freelancing.
Wow.
My first gig, I was a junior in college still. I had just come out to California for the summer to see my girlfriend who lived here from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. And I met a fellow named Steve Bochco. You might remember that name. And he was working on the lot at Universal, and he introduced me around, and I had to struggle for 3 whole weeks before I got a gig.
God, I know. I have a not dissimilar story like that people despise me for.
I know, me too.
I fell into The Simpsons. Like it was, and worked there and bought this fucker. So yeah, people, I don't like to spread that around because people hate me for it. And did Bochco, did he create Hill Street Blues as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He became kind of my mentor in the biz, and
right.
Really got me going and taught me the craft of television writing, over the course of time. It's like a jujitsu skill,
About the book. It reminded me reading it. It reminded me of The Great Gatsby.
No kidding. Huh.
That William is Tom, writing about this sort of very
Gatsby-like
hard to read mercurial figure,
very
Gatsby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that.
Another novel written in the same way as What Makes Sammy Run is the same. It's the same.
Bud Schulberg. Yeah, sure. It's a standard tome for anybody who works in this business for longer than 10 minutes. Yeah.
Oddly about a successful plagiarist, and it reads a lot like The Great Gatsby. And the great story about not only show business, but about the country, and this will get us back into it, as Bud Schulberg says, the villain of What Makes Sammy Run is Sammy Glick, who is an amoral guy. And he goes, people would come up to him and go, Sammy is my idol. He's like, no!
You got it all wrong.
You look at Michael Douglas in Wall Street. Yeah, that guy's got it. And nothing has changed.
This is the world we live in.
This is the world we live in. And this is the answer, and which leads me to the question that I wanted to ask you in reading the book. And I'm going to read a couple things from it that are so prescient, but is those who do not learn from history are destined to repeat it. Are we repeating history, or are we creating a new, more risible history?
I think we've surpassed history. I mean, if you look at the America First movement in the 1930s, for instance, which is
people don't realize.
No, that's the data that those guys mined. That was the first shot at this, of a fascist takeover from within. I have it literally right here.
Oh, do you? Okay,
yeah. Great.
May I?
Yes, please.
I'm going to read it. This is from the Yankee Sphinx, and I'll, because people like Charles Lindbergh, who flew across the Atlantic, famed American hero, great aviator, was a complete fascist sympathizer. Tool. Loved it. And he was, he looked good in a photo, and he became the stalking horse for this movement in America. And it says in your book, it's true, Lindbergh's group called itself, without irony, America First. Sound familiar? That's me. Many elected officials took cash that prosecutors traced back to Hitler's treasury, and they used those funds for the devil's work, spreading ugly rumors to sow distrust in democratic traditions, amplifying incendiary white nationalist propaganda, recruiting battalions of armed militia forces patterned on Hitler's brown shirts. These turncoats wanted to end, by force of arms, the American experiment.
Here we are.
Sound familiar? I mean, it's jaw-dropping. It's right there.
These people are nothing if not persistent.
And
they've been here since the beginning. Let's put it that way. And weirdly, kind of the same proportions have remained constant. According to a historian friend of mine, it was about 30% of the people who wanted to remain a British colony. It's about 30% of the people who lived in the Confederacy. And it's now about 30 to 33% of the people who are imposing minority rule on our country, not unlike what happened in Germany in the 30s.
And the one, and I don't know if this is a difference or not, but they have an amplified voice.
And it's no accident. It's all choreographed. And organized to the teeth. And it's I think the old cliche is Democrats fall out and Republicans fall in line.
Right. Yeah. Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend, the great Kevin Rooney, who I just quoted, used to say, the Republican Party, it's like you go to a restaurant and they give you a bowl of shit, and the Democrats Party is like a bowl of clam chowder with shit in it.
That's like, really good.
At the end of the day, I think I'll take the chowder and try my luck.
I'll take the chowder. Yeah,
but. And I mean, there's great comfort in reading the book because you realize that we've been tried before, that these are not new things, but it does seem like the stakes were never greater than they were in 1942, 3, 4. But the stakes do seem incredibly high now, and it does drive you to distraction to see people not learn and to see this just repeat itself over and over and over again. And I don't I don't. I have to work. I have to work, as my therapist would say, concentrate on the things that you can affect.
Exactly right.
And
listen to the Stoics. I mean, it used to be that these people didn't have a voice. They used to be called the silent majority.
right.
They were never the majority, by the way, but they glamorized them and flattered them by, it was Nixon who, coined that.
Yeah.
And
the great silent majority of America.
there you go. And he brought them into the fold, and they got him elected. And
Right.
it's not unlike what this Carnival Barker that we've got now did in the same way. And he became a useful Trojan horse for powers that be, and or the powers that want to be. And as it's starting to emerge, this was a 40 to 50 year project on their part.
Yeah. No, especially like with the overtaking of the judiciary, and that is something that it's not in the it didn't, that was something that Roosevelt tried early on, was when
he was going to. I mean, he had similar problems with the conservative Supreme Court in his years, and one of his big projects was to try to oust them all or add judges.
Right,
and it was I believe it was the 36 election when that kind of came to a head, and the person he was hoping was going to be in charge of this project for him, Harry Hopkins, his closest advisor, took ill.
Right.
And they didn't have time to take it on. And then before you knew it, Pearl Harbor happened.
When Pearl Harbor happened, he had been the president for 8 years?
Since March of 33. Yeah.
33.
He was inaugurated, yeah.
Yeah. And this is 1941. And so he's already been president for like practically a decade already.
And been elected a third time, which was unprecedented. The previous month before the attack.
Yeah.
Or no, the previous year before the attack. Yeah.
And it's almost the entirety of World War II is a coda to his two-term presidency.
Yeah.
And we feel, and then America saved the world, and it's far more complicated. And we didn't know the one of the things that navigated what he accomplished in terms of saving America, saving democracy by rescuing the economy from the Depression, and then saving the country from global fascist takeover, which we played a big part in.
Yeah.
So, and as did 21 million dead Russians.
Yeah.
He was a master at working people, and we don't have that in the current administration. I think maybe Clinton had similar abilities to work people.
I think of the people we've had since, he's the closest analog.
Yeah. People that either oozed empathy or were aware of what empathy was.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the great, a story that I knew that you tell in the book is he knew that we had to partner with Russia to defeat Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew Russia wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you have to hold your nose and vote for the lesser evil. That's not a popular opinion on Twitter, but in reality, it's often the case. And he played. Tell the story about how he knew he had to make fun of Winston Churchill to inculcate himself with Stalin.
Yeah,
it's so. I'll let you tell it, but it's
this was this great skill that he had. And
we're talking about Roosevelt, obviously.
That he was able to read people extraordinarily well, and he had absolute opacity as in terms of how he presented himself. It was hail fellow, well met. He had a grand, eloquent style. he sounded like a guy in a Broadway play who was on top of the world and could keep all the plates spinning around him effortlessly while he was making cocktails on the side.
Yeah. He liked a cocktail.
He did like a, well, I mean, wouldn't you if it was 1942 and you're in the middle of the shit? The truth was he was an amazing manipulator of people, but generally for positive results. He always had a calculus in his head that involved algorithms that these assholes in Silicon Valley could only dream of having in their software. He understood the world as an organic set of peoples and circumstances and governments, and he understood how the game was played diplomatically, through force, through coercion, through persuasion. He was a master of all those arts. And the biggest problem he had at the beginning of the war was that our greatest and strongest ally was Great Britain. Because by the time it started, Great Britain was the only country in Europe that was left.
Right.
Hitler had taken everything else.
Right. And it's sort of, and is that solely geographical? Is that solely because of the channel?
I think so. I think, and it also had to do with the close ties kind of historically between Germany and England. There was a reluctance to go bomb the hell out of London until the Blitz. They were trying to bring them on board without having to invade, which they also knew would be extraordinarily costly. And then they just said, fuck it, we're going to go right after them. So Churchill was desperate for the United States to come into the war. Starting in 1939, he did everything but get down on his knees. Yeah. And we started this, what they called the Lend-Lease program, keeping them alive by sending them.
And that was, that's the thing that I always have to remind myself, and I talk to my kids and like Churchill said, and I'm paraphrasing, you can always count on America to do the right thing after it's exhausted every other option. And and that is always, it's like, we didn't, World War II didn't happen and we charged in a Superman suit and saved everything. We didn't want to get involved. And then, then we didn't even want to help. It wasn't until they punched us in the face that we went, okay.
And it was that same quadrant that we were talking about.
33%.
Ultra-nationalist, closed borders, isolationist tendencies, kind of lodged largely in the Midwest and the West at that time.
Right.
That we were fighting against. And he, how quaint is this? He knew he couldn't go to war unless he had the support of Congress, and he refused to do it.
Right.
He played by the rules.
Yeah, play by the rules, yeah.
But he also knew how to bend them when he needed to.
Right.
Because there's a lot of allowance for bending in that system.
It's a very elastic system, yeah.
Yeah.
And I always have to remember when, we talk about our country is, to quote George Carlin, founded by some slave owners that wanted to be free. The hypocrisy started from day one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was always there.
It doesn't mean it's bad. Just means it's flawed and human.
I mean, it also, basically, let's face it, the story of all of human history.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not that we're exceptionally one thing or the other. It's that we're kind of the same. With better ideals, maybe, better words to kind of back up our play or to at least justify the way we went about doing things.
Yeah. So, and that's what I always say to people that are purists. I go like, just point to the successful social utopia that you want to emulate, or who's the perfect leftist president that we've elected in the past that worked out well. Just point to where this has worked. And
usually they'll end up somewhere in Scandinavia.
Yeah. All right, so go ahead. I interrupted you.
That's okay. So look, his biggest problem from the beginning was how to handle Churchill, because Churchill was dying to use America's might to go right after Hitler and Germany, cross the channel. If it was up to him, he would have tried D-Day in 1941 or 42, and it would have failed miserably, because FDR knew we didn't have a standing army. We had to create one. We had to toughen them up. We had to test them. And the only way you test an army is to let them fight. I mean, that's the sad reality of it. And he knew that the best way to do that was to start in North Africa, where the stakes were lower,
Right.
where we had a reasonably good chance of succeeding. But he had to persuade his partners. At that point, that was Churchill and soon to be Joseph Stalin in Germany.
Right.
There were 53 nations that signed on for the Allied cause, but those were the two that mattered.
Right.
And so the conference you were referencing was in Tehran, where they were trying to decide, okay, where are we going to attack? How are we going to do it? Yada, yada, yada. And he outplayed Churchill by making fun of him in front of Stalin, which amused the little dictator.
Right.
And Stalin would talk turkey to you if he thought that you were on the level and you had the moxie to back it up. And
Right.
his assessment of Roosevelt was that he did. And so that's how they kind of maneuvered around Churchill and said, we're going to North Africa first, which was actually, that's where, the British were in deep, deep trouble. They were down to Cairo
Right.
as their last outpost in the continent, and they'd owned most of it for quite a while. And beyond Cairo were all the oil fields. And that's what Hitler was ultimately after, to power
Right.
everything else he wanted to do. So there was urgency in going there. And it was a smart move. And we pulled it off almost without a flaw. And the army got its blood up and its feet wet.
Right.
And then Churchill said, okay, how about Germany now? And they said, no, I'm sorry. Now we're going after Italy. Because
Right.
they had almost knocked Mussolini out.
But they
North
called it the
Africa.
soft underbelly of the fascist crocodile.
And he even drew a little drawing.
Uh-huh.
Churchill had drawn a little drawing of what that looked like. And so that's where they went next. And that became a long, drawn-out campaign. But when it was done, Mussolini was gone. Hitler was stretched thin between what was going on in Russia, which was a meat grinder.
Which was a self-inflicted wound.
Absolutely.
And especially, not only was Russia the self-inflicted wound, but his obsession with humiliating Stalin. They went after Stalingrad because it was named Stalingrad.
I know.
And it was...
This is where we fall
catastrophe.
back on actually, it's sort of the last hope of humanity, is that dictators are so incredibly willfully stupid
Yes.
about what they're doing and how they see themselves,
Yeah.
that their own grandiosity is always kind of at odds with what's tactically feasible or manageable. And thankfully, we have an even bigger idiot as who's playing fascist dictator in our country.
I say this about, I was fascinated by Nixon. He's such a Shakespearean character. And to be fair, you could say this about Clinton as well. These men become masters of the game of politics and the game of power, that the only person that can defeat them is them.
Yeah.
And they can't resist the challenge.
That's a great way to put it. Because that's inevitably what happens.
Yeah. And it's always over the dumbest, littlest thing. I mean, Watergate, which was the pin in the grenade, was the dumbest thing. I'm actually very good friends with David Kissinger, Henry's son.
I've met David.
Dave's the great. Dave's the greatest. Yeah. And he said that his father said that Watergate was because Nixon finally found a couple people stupid enough to do what he told them to do.
Well, we've got no shortage of those people now.
No, it's staffed by those people.
Yeah.
Another weird stuff just between you, me, and the apple tree. Because we were at Camp David. We were at the Western. No, it was at Camp David in the pool. And there were two pools at Camp David. There's the swimming pool, and then there's the president's pool. As a separate pool. But Julie was babysitting him, and they were in the president's pool. And he was a little kid. He was being babysat. And the president gets into the pool. And Julie goes, Daddy, David is just telling me what it's like to live in Cambridge. because his dad worked at Harvard and they lived in Cambridge. And the president of the United States says to this little kid, "How do you like living with all those sons of bitches?"
It's fantastic. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same president you could see getting sloshed and talking to the portraits in the White House.
Yeah, sure.
That's a fantastic story.
Amazing.
So, look, we had an ally problem, and the other. So he had to manage Churchill, which was a handful. He knew Churchill was indispensable for helping keep that country alive. He was an inspiring orator. He was a terrific leader in a crisis. He was a terrible commander in chief.
That's it, and that's in the book. He all of these people are giants. Yeah, and they were not, yes, they were formed by their time and the events that they were thrust upon, but they were also, they met that moment, and not everybody did meet that moment. They were larger than life people, and they had proven themselves, and they were flawed people. Like, people forget. FDR did all of this in a wheelchair, and was hidden from the public. Mm-hmm. And he had, if not a physical affair, a long-running emotional affair going on in the White House, hidden from his wife. Or I don't know how. Churchill was, they're all alcoholics, and but Churchill was a great leader, but a terrible commander in chief. He was impulsive. He was right, and that's lost in the mix of history.
It is, and because he was so good at burnishing his own reputation,
right. But he did Gallipoli and Dunkirk.
I was about to bring up Gallipoli, and Dunkirk. So I mean, that's two strikes, right? So FDR, who actually had run the Navy during World War I and knew a lot about how a war should be conducted, had never actually commanded in a war, but he turned out to be an amazing commander-in-chief. His instincts were impeccable, his timing was amazing, and his ability to rally people and bring together resources where they were needed was unparalleled. So he said, he made sure, okay, we're coming in, Winston, we will fight this war together, but I'm going to run it. And that's the way it's got to be. And Churchill said, what choice do I have?
Yeah, I get that. And he also had Eisenhower, who also was really good at managing people. Like D-Day, if there was anything harder than the D-Day operation, it was planning the D-Day operation. Yeah. Like it's a herding cats, it's just getting all of these things into one thing. Let me ask you one historical question that I don't know enough about. Mm-hmm. Henry Wallace is underreported influence on Roosevelt and figure in this era.
He is, and
he definitely is one of those. There was a fork in the road, and they took the other fork.
Mm-hmm. And he was a committed socialist and a brilliant guy, a great Secretary of Agriculture for I think it was one term under FDR, and then it became expedient because of the people he could bring in. He was made vice president for a term, and he was as close as the left ever got to the levers of power in that way, a committed leftist. He's a fascinating character. But by 1944, when FDR ran for the fourth time, the conservative forces in the country were already rallying and marshaling to take over once the war was done. And they would not accept a socialist sitting in that seat when they knew FDR was in fragile health. So that's when Harry S. Truman enters the scene as the kind of dark horse candidate for vice president in 1944, a man FDR knew nothing about.
He didn't know anything about him, yeah.
And still didn't, even after he took the job. I mean, his concept of the vice presidency was stand over there and it says right next to you, break glass in case of emergency. And just stay there.
And Harry Truman was someone who met his moment in a way that surprised everybody.
Exactly.
No one knew he had it in him. He was not Roosevelt in any way. In politics, we always want what we don't have. We
Sure.
go on to something. So that tracks. But you can say, and I think this is more often the rule than it is not, that FDR was incredibly irresponsible in going with Harry Truman, and then not tell. He didn't know about the Manhattan Project.
He never told him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine his surprise.
Because people don't think they're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't think she was going to die.
They don't do themselves or us any favors when they do themselves that way. Look, the whole book came about because my great-granduncle was this figure in FDR's life for those 12 years, and they had known each other since 1913 when my uncle was working for the Washington Post and covering the Navy Department. And they became good friends during that time. They were, you could say, starting out in their careers kind of at the same time and at a commensurate level. And he made quite an impression on FDR. And when the time came, once he had gotten in office, and
that's, by the way, no small feat.
No small feat.
no small feat. Yeah.
So the point was, he was a committed newspaper man. He was a very poor Irish Catholic, son of an Irish blacksmith who had immigrated, who first in his family to go to college, studied for the seminary, and decided, I think I'll be a journalist instead. But he retained those kind of priestly qualities. And this is what made the relationship so unique, because you had the kind of pastoral qualities of a rural cleric, and the compassion and the understanding and the ability to listen and be supportive. And that was my great uncle. And
he was, it's so funny because people forget this. He was Catholic, which was a huge detriment.
Yeah.
In that era.
It was. And he kept it kind of on the down low. And FDR was this epitome of high Anglican, aristocratic.
He was the wasp's wasp.
The wasp's wasp. I mean, there was nobody who more exemplified that role model. So they made an unlikely pair, but his nickname for my uncle was the Bishop.
Right.
And that was for a reason, because he could give good counsel without ever FDR feeling like he had his own agenda. He was there to help him and serve him. So he ended up keeping a diary during the war. Everyday business of the office of the man, both in official capacity and private capacity, because he knew there was a press blackout imposed on the president because wartime, and he was a trained journalist and the only one in the White House. He said, I got to keep the records here for history. So he kept this diary starting right after Pearl Harbor and ending right after FDR died in Warm Springs, Georgia, when my great uncle was with him, up through the funeral. And that book was published. Those diaries were published in 1958. He went on to serve in the same capacity for Truman for 8 years after this, by the way, well into his early 70s. And he published the book in 58 to great acclaim. It became a standard text for anybody who ever wanted to write about the Roosevelts. And I was given a copy when I was very young by him before he died. And my thought after Trump took office in 1916 is, what the hell can I do?
In 2016.
Sorry. Yeah. Did I say 19? Seems like it. 2016.
It certainly does.
I said, what can I do? What story could I tell? Because that's what I do. I thought, I can tell the story of my uncle and FDR. So I wrote the book in the first person from his point of view, what it was like to be a fly on that wall and be around all those momentous moments and all the lighthearted ones that also took place, because he became a sort of family member. And I felt that was a story that people might respond to now and maybe take some comfort in. And for my part, it was my way of honoring my uncle's contribution, because I felt, after learning as much as I did about it, that it was substantial.
Yeah. And you had to, and there must have just been a lot of research and a lot of
2 years.
Yeah.
And I buried myself in the FDR library for a good part of that time. And my uncle had helped organize that library. It was the first presidential library, and he served as the original director of it. So I had a pretty good in.
The book starts at Eleanor Roosevelt's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a line that there's a piece that your granduncle says, whereas all these people are standing around. Eisenhower is there, and I think Truman is there.
Yeah, but not in the group. I think you mean with General George Marshall and
Murrow, Edward Murrow. And it says, I'm going to read it. Time plays tricks this way. You'll discover, chances are you have already, as the people you know begin to die off around you. It leaves you and your fellow survivors, if you're lucky enough to stick around, shaking your heads in wonder and befuddlement. How in the world did this happen to us? And I'm wondering if you are beginning to feel that way.
Oh, certainly.
But you also you are not in any way retirement. You are so engaged and going through things that are a young man's battles. It's quite impressive, but you do get this feeling of, okay.
Yeah. What's next?
Yeah.
I mean, they're dropping like flies. And I know you lose people every week. In 2018, I spent a year working with Mel Brooks. I've known him a long time.
Yeah. And when you're 92, somebody you know dies every day.
That's right.
And every day at 2:30, Shelby, the assistant, would pop her head in the door. New York Times needs a quote about Henry Mancini. New York Times needs a quote about Neil Simon. New York Times, just like.
Yeah. The last time I saw Mel was at the funeral of our mutual literary agent, who was one of the great friends of my life, a wonderful guy named Ed Victor, who was a kind of prince of the industry. He was the Swifty Lazar of his era.
Got it.
And he represented both Mel and me. And I'd met Mel over the years frequently in Ed's company. And I also knew him a little bit through David Lynch, who had because he produced The Elephant Man. And Mel is, as you know, every bit as delightful a human being.
He's everything you want him to be.
Everything you want him to be. And we know that that's not often the case in show business. Mm-hmm. And so God bless him. He's a treasure. And I feel for him, I mean, that is the problem with the problem with longevity is, you're going to be alone eventually. My
dad is 95, and he sits down in his chair every day and looks at the TV and my mother's ashes and goes back and forth. Which leads me, as we conclude, to, you were partnered with David Lynch for a long time.
Yeah.
And when he passed, and it was such the timing was like, you couldn't have written the timing better with the election and the fires and all that. But everything about, that you guys did, that has all had such an amazing resurgence. And what I didn't know, and if I may, I have two. Well, I have two Twin Peaks questions for you, and they're not like, what would Lucy Moran do if she was the president? I'm not going to do that to you.
That's one no one's ever asked me.
Yeah. What I did not know, I learned this yesterday from our friend Mary, that kids that I would not think would be interested in Twin Peaks have gotten into it through TikTok.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was on TikTok. And there is something about it that's greater than the sum of its parts and transcends epochs of pop culture in a way that The X-Files, which was, you could say, user-friendly Twin Peaks, does not. And that's not a knock on the X-Files.
No, not at all. Most television is designed to be fairly disposable and of the moment.
Yeah.
And not built for the long run. And I sensed that I was studying television from a very early age. I was fascinated by it as a medium. And the storytellers that mattered to me were people like Rod Serling and
Look,
Gene Roddenberry.
I have this right by my desk.
Oh,
Hang
do
on,
you?
I have to
Yeah.
show it to you. One of my favorite things, a Rod Serling ad for socks.
Oh, perfect. He wore them well, didn't he?
That guy would sell anything.
Well, it's a rough business.
I'm as big a fan. I adapted his first draft script of Planet of the Apes as a graphic novel.
Oh, no kidding. Huh.
Because it's a very different story. It's basically 7 Days in May on the Planet of the Apes. It's set in a city. It's a political thriller. But what I didn't realize, if you've ever written a graphic novel, is that you get a maximum of 8 panels a page. You get 1 action a panel, and you have a certain amount of pages that you can do. So every day I had to get up and edit Rod Serling, who was the Aaron Sorkin of his era.
He was, very much so.
He liked a speech.
Yeah.
And I just had this image of this angry ghost behind me. Why are you cutting that? Well, that's great. What are you doing?
What a burden.
Yeah. But anyway, so to continue, like those people, Rod Serling, Gene Roddenberry, these great storytellers that also have written, that created things that moved, that defy their shelf life.
Yeah. So those were the things that I came into television thinking, okay, that's what I want to do at some point when I have my moment, and maybe the moment will come and maybe it won't. There's no way of knowing that. You have to seize it when it does. You could do something that breaks through and speaks to people at a different level, that is not just au courant, that isn't there to simply hypnotize you so you buy the products that they subliminally assault you with during the commercials. It's that the actual content of the show is what matters. Socks. Buy socks. I never saw that the Twilight Zone was a vehicle for subversively selling socks, I have to say, but maybe there was an episode, you never know. And so that's what, that's not the kind of thing you can tell anybody. I could tell David that. David didn't know television.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he'd watched it, but he hadn't studied it. And I said, I think we have a chance to do something that could last. And we just got to stick to our guns. And we did. And we told the network to, go pound sand whenever we felt like it. And they were in third place, so they had no moxie to kind of say, no, you're not going to do that. And we prevailed. I mean, the show isn't perfect. It had its ups and downs, and but it stood the test of time. And I think when we came back 25 years later and did the third season that we had finally got around to doing, it was a great exclamation point to the sentence.
I agree. And you two did have a very Lennon-McCartney-like relationship, working relationship. And one of the frustrations about that is that it's Lennon-McCartney when but it's like, but this is, when you read about it, you realize that this is the thing that actually starts the car and drives it. We bear that with endless grace.
It's I've talked to Paul about that, actually.
I bet you have. Yeah.
And it's like, if you're being compared to Paul McCartney, it's not very fulsome of you to complain. I mean, is there a better exemplar for how a person in the arts should behave for 60 years than what that man has done? So I'll take that as a tremendous compliment.
To take Twin Peaks as the Beatles output, because there's Lynch Frost's Twin Peaks, there's Lynch's Twin Peaks, and there's Frost's Twin Peaks. And what I really love about that world is that it is an expansive, and you can use this as a delivery system to tell any story you want.
Yeah, and you can go off and do
yeah.
a solo album if you want to,
Right,
and come back to it. Yeah,
I am one of those people, and I was the age. I was late 20s, living in LA, just moved here, had my girlfriend and I had an apartment. We had the parties. We had the Bob Wanted poster on our fridge. I told a story on this podcast about we couldn't find cherry pie in LA on a Thursday because we wanted to have a party.
Did you try Duke bars?
We whenever it doesn't matter because I hate cherry pie. So
you do. Okay, my favorite kind of pie.
Yeah, we got apple pie. It didn't matter, but but like I was there. I was that.
Mm-hmm.
I was there, and then I saw the film and hated it because it wasn't what I wanted.
It wasn't Lennon McCartney. It wasn't Lennon McCartney.
Yeah, it was the Plastic Ono Band. It was Mother. It wasn't A Day in the Life. It was Mother. And to really take a truncheon to this analogy.
Yeah.
But as I got older, and I get it. Now I get it.
Yeah.
It's a tough watch, but it's an essential watch.
Yeah, it's part of the deal. Yeah.
It's part of the deal. And I know from people who have suffered abuse that representation matters. And in that, if only for that, it's to be, held up. And
I agree. I agree.
I distinctly remember when, after the cancellation, that propaganda was either giving away props or had a prop auction. And my roommate and I were going to go. And somehow we didn't go, but I knew somebody that got like a phone from the sheriff's station and a mug from the like, did I dream that?
No, I remember that because we had moved offices, I think. I mean, propaganda gave us office space at the very beginning of the process. They weren't really involved with the project. Yeah. They just gave us housing. Yeah. And occasionally.
But they had the greatest logo, and all the cool people had
they were all cool people. And David
and everybody had that T-shirt. Everybody had the propaganda T-shirt.
Oh, it's cool. And Yanni Sigbatson and Steve Golan were super cool guys. And Fincher was working there a lot on his way up the ladder and doing music videos. So it was a cool environment. But they weren't involved with the show. They gave us essential food and shelter, when we were seeking a home.
Rented a room.
Yeah. But they did have an auction, I recall. As when we closed down our offices, there was a tremendous amount of cost to put sets and props and everything into storage forever. And some of that stuff was fairly generic. I mean, it was emblematic, and it would be cool to have, I guess, on your coffee table. But,
I've got some stuff.
So yes, you're remembering that accurately.
Okay, good. Because there are 3 or 4 things that happened to me in my life where I go like, did I dream that?
Yeah. I have that almost daily.
And my last question is as a writer, and I love The Return. And I loved, and this is what I wanted to get back to, was there's it's never the same thing. And you refuse to do fan service.
Refused.
And I love that. I thought it was great. And all 3 are different. The film, the first series, and the third and the second series are all different, tonally, aesthetically. There are 2 things which happen, and I want to know if this is something that was ever discussed, because in the film, when they go to Laura's house, the door of the house is opened by the owner of the house, who is played by, in reality, the owner of the house. Also, Audrey Horne had an affair with Justice Wheeler, who was played by Billy Zane. But in the show, she keeps talking about Billy. My friend has a theory that you were consciously leeching the show into our reality. That as he went through all the Black Lodge and the Red Room or what have you, and they're going into alternative realities and such as that reality was leaching into the show.
It's not a bad theory. And
if you did it, big swing.
Yeah. No, it was a little bit. I can give that a little bit of oxygen. We, remember the other favorite show of mine from the '60s was The Prisoner.
Sure. And
The Prisoner, in its conclusion, completely blew up its own universe.
Yes.
And
to the music of Lennon-McCartney.
That's right. So that idea was always in my head. And the idea of Prospero breaking his staff and giving away his book at the end of The Tempest.
Yep.
I'm not going to tell stories anymore. That's Shakespeare saying goodbye to his characters. There was a little bit of that for us because we thought this might be the last go around, certainly with this set of actors, because we've now lost so many of them. That there was a little bit of that. And kudos to you for kind of extracting it.
And this is what I learned at The Simpsons. The Bible of The Simpsons is the first act has nothing to do with the story. The first act is a freestanding sketch. You introduce the story at the end of the first act, and then you introduce the story in the second act. And then the third act is turn the story as hard as you can without breaking it. But nothing short of turning it as hard as you can will suffice. And so I'm always looking for where the push is. And so that is why I really, that is why I'm such a fan. That's
we wrestled with the ending for a very long time, more than a lot of the rest of the script. Put together. It was proportionally, more of it was spent on the end than the beginning. Yeah. Which is as it should be.
Now that I know when Dale returns, I have a lot more patience with Dougie. But it was just like, at the time, I was like, is it this week, please?
I know it made people very antsy.
But
we were having a riot. We thought Kyle was doing was I was collapsing off camera.
Brilliant.
It was he's such a brilliant actor, and it was so funny. That's an underrated. That's a Peter Sellers turn. Yeah, absolutely.
3 completely distinct characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a very good friend that's in the cast, David Koechner. One of the,
Oh, sure. He's a great guy.
I think it's my favorite of the incarnations.
I have a similar feeling because it just said more about who we were at the time we were doing it, and we were older and hopefully wiser people.
Well, I read that you were the first thing that inspired you was the housing crisis in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, yeah.
And that was like, that you can use this to tell any story you want. Have you ever heard of California City?
Don't know that I have.
Google it when we're done. It's the 3rd largest city in California geographically.
Really?
It abuts Death Valley east of Santa Barbara. Some grillionaire was going to build this massive city, and the industry never showed up and the city never showed up. So you have this massive grid of streets.
Oh, wow.
And you'll have like a block with 1 house on it and another block with 3 empty houses on it. And I know a guy that lives there.
All by himself.
The book is The Yankee Sphinx, available at any of America's 19 surviving bookstores, or you can get it online. Try to get it somewhere where you're not giving money to a guy that doesn't need any more online, if you know what I'm saying. But barnesandnoble.com or any place fine books are sold. It's great because it's a personal story. it puts you in the place of your granduncle, and you watch these historic events from his perspective, and it's in that way it's an immersive story of a time that echoes our time, and it's comforting in that way. That
and
this
hopefully
stuff
it's a
has happened
roadmap.
before.
And hopefully it's a bit of a roadmap for how to get out of it.
That's the other that it's a very hopeful. It's a very hopeful story, and it's really beautiful. It's called the Yankee Sphinx, which was FDR's nickname with his closest friends. Are you already working on a new novel? Are you one of those guys that always has something
I'm
boiling?
gonna have a Diet Coke first before. I've got a couple of things, taxiing on the runway, but nothing yet that I'm ready to jump into.
Yeah. Well, I from a personal view, I hope that you continue your. I don't know if you want to turn your Twin Peaks books into a trilogy, but I would buy it. I have. I really enjoy them, and I enjoyed all of the bringing in of Jack Parsons, and I just because I'm like you, I'm a history nut, so that that stuff.
Well, I was writing in effect a James Michener version of Weird America.
Yeah, no,
with Twin Peaks as kind of the capital,
and that's the world that I understand. God, I'm so sorry. I keep talking. I know the origin of Mulholland Drive was, it was probably one conversation, but it was just yeah, you could make this a work. You can. That's the America that I prefer to live in, and that's why, I remember being 21 years old, going to see Eraserhead at midnight. It was so important because I was like, no, I'm a weirdo. Mm-hmm. This is what I do. I don't care about fishing and hunting. Mm-hmm. I want to do this. Yeah. And it gave you an identity and a perspective. It was so important to my development as a person.
Yeah.
Just that perspective. So yeah, I love all that stuff, all that, the art bell of it all.
Very much so. Yeah. At 3 a.m. or whenever art was on, but yeah.
I still listen to those because they have them as podcasts. I forget how that Y2K hung over our head like a sword of Damocles.
It was going to destroy everything.
He was the king of yes and. I remember once just coming home from work back in the 90s when you get out of work at 2 a.m. on a show. Now the hours are much more civil. But literally, it was like, hi, Art. I'm calling from Louisiana. I'm a time traveler from the Andromeda Galaxy. Just go ahead, sir.
Yeah, please, for an hour.
But no, he never questions anything. Yes, and. Yeah. Anyway, Mark Frost, thank you so very much for giving me your time today. I went way over, and I apologize, but I really enjoyed talking to you.
Genuine pleasure, Dana. Really
good. Thanks. The book is The Yankee Sphinx. I can't recommend it, and it's an easy read. It just flows like butter. And so keep an eye out for it, and keep an eye out for whatever you do next, whatever it is.
It's a great Father's Day present. Let's mention that because nobody knows what to get their dad.
And dads love World War II.
They do.
World War II is to dads what Sex and the City is to moms. The other side doesn't understand it, but trust me.
On this one, you're dead certain. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, and good luck with all of with your next big move and all that stuff.
Thanks. Well, I hope we'll see you down the road.
I certainly hope so. It was a real pleasure.
Britain's mighty battleship, HMS Prince of Wales, plows westward through the gray reaches of the North Atlantic. Her prow is pointed toward the war's most newsworthy meeting. In these first official motion pictures, the camera spots Winston Churchill, Britain's Prime Minister, with Lord Beaverbrook, the Empire's supply chief. The Prime Minister leaves his ship to join the President of the United States. Significantly, the waters of the Atlantic are about to serve as the meeting ground for the leaders of the two strongest naval powers on that troubled ocean. Constant vigilance protects the two squadrons, whose ring of steel surrounds the ocean meeting place. Mr. Churchill is piped aboard the USS Augusta, all hands at stiff attention as he takes the salute. The President greets Mr. Churchill, who hands him a letter from King George VI.
Roosevelt and Churchill have met. Each knows the other. Each trusts the other. They personify the two great democracies as they part with simplicity and friendship, sure of themselves and their nations.
They're true tales from Weirdsville. Tales from Weirdsville. And they're true.
Can your heart stand the shocking facts?
Space. An endless tapestry of stars reaching toward infinity. Scattered through its vastness are 100 billion planets on which life theoretically could exist. If only 1% of that life is intelligent, there could be 1 million civilizations out there.
That is the voice of Rod Serling, of course, narrating 1973's In Search of Ancient Astronauts, one of the many documentaries that came out at that time, posing the question, what if UFOs arrived here before Roswell, New Mexico, before the late 1940s? What if aliens were actually the guiding hands that helped shape human development? This idea came to the fore in the mid to late 1960s, and no one championed it more or made more money off it than Erich von Däniken. Von Däniken came from Switzerland, land of fine chocolates, Velcro, Helvetica font, and the World Wide Web. It also gave us Erich von Däniken. Erich operated in what would now be known as the alternative history wing of the red-pilled podcast world. And indeed, he was an alternative historian without peer. He claimed to have first become interested in the concept of ancient aliens while attending Catholic school in Germany. Like most good Catholics, he rejected the teachings of the church, feeling the idea of a single, all-powerful God was just too far-fetched. While still in school, he was arrested for theft, and after a 4-month suspended sentence and a short-lived career working in the food service industry, a line of work that would lead anyone to reject God if you're not careful, he took a hard left turn, bailed out of school, and moved to Egypt. While in Egypt, von Däniken began to write. He had a theory that he wanted to share with the world. A theory that aliens had not only visited Earth in the distant past, but in our deep, deep historical past. They came here and influenced our ancient civilizations. His first article appeared in the German-Canadian periodical Der Nordwester, or The Northwester, and was titled, in German of course, Were Our Ancestors Visited by Extraterrestrials? As you would imagine, for an article about ancient aliens printed in a German-Canadian German-language magazine in 1964, few people noticed. Von Däniken parlayed his newly minted career as a published article writer with a career in, wait for it, hotel management. He was put in charge of operations at the Hotel Rosenhügel in Davos, Switzerland. So much for Egypt. It was while running that hotel that von Däniken diligently, after hours, worked on what would become his masterpiece, the book that would eventually be titled Chariots of the Gods, which, fun fact, ends in a question mark. So really, the title is Chariots of the Gods? But when you ask for it, it's like, do you have chariots of the gods? You don't say, do you have chariots of the gods? Because it's a double question. It's, you get it. Authors, don't end your book title in a question mark. Von Daniken's premise in the book was quite simple. Based on zero evidence and even less research, Von Daniken believed that anything impressive created by an ancient civilization was either created by aliens or created by people after having been taught how to do it by aliens. As evidence, the book points to the pyramids and says, come on, nobody could make that. It points to ancient artworks depicting figures on the sides of cave walls and temples and says, don't they kinda sorta look like 1950s versions of Space Guys? You need more evidence than that, I don't. If there was anything old that Von Daniken couldn't understand, he immediately attributed it to ancient alien tech. For example, the Piri Reis map. The what, huh? The Piri Reis map is a world map compiled in the year 1513 by a cartographer from the Ottoman Empire named Piri Reis. It was discovered in 1929 and gained a degree of fame as it contained a partial copy of a lost map used by Christopher Columbus. Von Daniken believed that there was no way anyone in the 16th century could have drawn this map so accurately without having had the ability to see the world from outer space. Fun fact, there were ways. There were several ways. In fact, the Piri Reis map isn't even the most accurate map of its era. But don't tell that to Eric Von Daniken. It was all the work of ancient aliens. And how did he prove this? By citing a bunch of unrelated stuff and ascribing that a different meaning as well. For example, in Malta, there are ancient ruts in the ground made by the wheels of carts. Were they really ruts in the ground made by the wheels of carts? Or were they glyphs carved into the ground meant to communicate with ancient astronauts? Have you ever heard about the Nazca lines in Peru? They are these huge geoglyphs carved into the hills in Peru by the indigenous peoples of the area, depicting local animals and plants, things like hummingbirds and monkeys. Or were they signs telling aliens what to expect when they visited? Things like hummingbirds and monkeys. One of the marvels of ancient architecture are the New Kingdom temples in Egypt, built to honor the wealth and power of the New Kingdom pharaohs. Some of the designs on the temples vaguely resemble helicopters. Now, they could be depicting anything. Dragonflies come to mind. Or they're incontrovertible proof that the New Kingdom pharaohs were visited by ancient aliens who arrived in helicopters. On a roll now, Von Daniken postulated that all references in all major world religions to gods show up quite often in studies of religions, especially those gods who come from the sky or live in the heavens, which, again, is pretty much all of them except for Aquaman. Well, obviously, these are all depictions of aliens. If they didn't live there, why would the people in Peru carve pictures of monkeys on the hills for them to look at? One false premise backs up another. Zeus? Jesus? Isis? Nope, it's E.T., Mork, and Gort. The Ark of the Covenant? Well, it's an ancient alien telephone. The fire and brimstone destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah? Obviously, a nuclear bomb dropped by aliens. Aliens had nuclear bombs? Of course. Why do you think they came up with helicopters? So they could have something to fly around the nuclear bombs. Now everything makes perfect sense. Von Daniken didn't just read randomly, leap to conclusions, or simply make stuff up. He did claim at one point to have personally explored a cave system in Ecuador that was made in totality by aliens. And it was filled with gold and strange metal tablets. Eventually, he admitted that he made the whole thing up. But that doesn't prove it isn't real. As for the gold artifacts that he presented as evidence, well, they weren't gold, they were brass. And they weren't ancient, they were modern. And they weren't made by aliens, they were made by people. But other than that, von Daniken discovered Incan stones in Peru depicting carvings of early man using telescopes, centuries before the invention of the telescope. How could you possibly explain that? Easy. They were fake. The PBS show Nova even found the sculptor, a guy who cranked him out on a daily basis and sold them to tourists. As the years went by, more and more of these errors were discovered, and Daniken admitted them all directly, without even blinking, without so much as a shrug. But in no new printing of Chariots of the Gods are these errors ever corrected. Upon its completion, the original manuscript made the rounds and was rejected by every publisher, earthbound or extraterrestrial. That is, until 1967. When publisher Econ Verlag agreed to publish the book on one tiny condition, that it be completely rewritten by a professional writer. Fine! That professional writer's name was Ulz Utermann. Ulz was a professional writer. In fact, he was the editor of the official Nazi Party newspaper, Völkischer Beobachter, under the pen name Wilhelm Rockstoff. Who better to rewrite your pseudo-scientific manuscript than an actual bona fide Nazi? After the manuscript received its contractually mandated rewrite by an honest-to-God card-carrying member of the Nazi Party, Chariots of the Gods was cleared for publication and hit the shelves in 1968. Likely due to the perfect timing of the cultural interest in reports of alien abductions, post-Kennedy assassination conspiracy theory culture, and the Vietnam-era hippie-fueled interest in the paranormal, occult, and the esoteric, Chariots of the Gods became an unexpected bestseller. In November of 1968, just as the book was being published, von Daniken hit one minor road bump. He was arrested, again. This time for committing fraud and falsifying hotel records. This allowed him to steal over $130,000 over a 12-year period to fund a globe-trotting playboy lifestyle. He claimed at his trial that it was actually the bank's fault for not doing its due diligence before granting him a loan in the first place. If you didn't want me to rob your house, you shouldn't put such cool stuff in it. Throughout the 1970s, von Daniken and his books received widespread praise, and from the people who knew what they were talking about, widespread criticism. Carl Sagan, for example, wrote that von Daniken's principal thesis was, "Our ancestors were all dummies." So, you're probably wondering, despite being an unscientific, plagiarized, twice-removed work of pseudoscience written by a Swiss con man and rewritten by a full-on Sieg Heil Nazi, how did this thing become such a massive hit? Well, the book was adapted as a German-language documentary, quote-unquote. In 1971, Alan Landsberg Productions, who would go on to produce both Jaws 3D and Nell Carter's Gimme a Break, purchased the television rights to the German documentary and re-edited it into a 1-hour TV special entitled In Search of Ancient Astronauts. And this aired on NBC in 1973 and was narrated by Rod Serling. It was a huge hit, and it had a sequel entitled In Search of Ancient Mysteries, also consisting of re-edited footage from German documentaries and also narrated by Rod Serling. That aired in 1974, again on NBC. These two specials proved so popular that in 1976, a full-on TV series was commissioned to explore these similar but different and strange and unusual phenomena. This series was titled In Search Of, but it was hosted by Leonard Nimoy because Rod Serling had passed. In Search Of aired for 144 episodes. Erich von Daniken passed away on January 10th, 2026 at the ripe old age of 90, having sold over 75 million books in over 30 languages. He spent 60 years influencing pop culture with a magnificent con job. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you're incapable of embarrassment, the sky's the limit.
Dr. Carl Sagan is one of the directors of the Mariner mission exploring Mars. And he has a special interest in the possibilities of intelligent life in the universe.
The question arises, might there have been a visit to the Earth in historical times? There are popular books on this subject. It's an idea which people find exciting. It's a kind of scientific justification of theological belief which people would rather believe in any case. It's a kind of modern dress for old-time religion. Well, what about that? Is that possible or not? I can only say that you can't exclude the possibility, but there's not a smidgen of evidence that is compelling.
With the bathing girl season going strong, Venice, California is the candid cameraman's delight. Nobody seems to mind anything here, and that's always a swell state of affairs when you're looking for something to photograph. For instance, this girl's boyfriend is in the palm of her hand until she gets tired of holding him. Disembodied heads are quite common at Venice without the usual distress of having them cut off first. And you can get fine double-jointed shots if you click the shutter fast enough. Remember that guy taking a nap? Well, she'll have a tough time laughing off the stenciled record of a man who has made his mark.
And now, on with the show.
It's a crisp, clear, sunny, bright, glorious sun-dappled day. High atop the Mulholland Drive view shelf here in sunny Southern California, the People's Republic of California, in the former United States. If this podcast were struck by lightning and became a human being, it would be our next guest. It's alarming I've gone this far without having this man on the show. He's the author of innumerable books, among them, and this is just a smattering, Lugosi, Bela Lugosi, Dreams and Nightmares, The Perils of Movie-Going in America. How many books on Bela Lugosi have you written?
On him and his films, probably around 10, 11.
Yeah, around 10, 11. And a book that I want to get into, Horror at the Drive-In, which is an anthology of essays, but it is, if you cut me open, I would bleed this book. Horror at the Drive-In, Essays in Popular Americana. And you have a new book out from our good friends at Feral Press, and this thing is on my coffee table, and it is glorious. Everyone listening to this podcast needs to buy this book. It is called Weirdhumentary: Ancient Aliens, Fallacious Prophecies, and Mysterious Monsters from 1970s Documentaries. It is a primer on all of those great In Search of, Ancient Aliens, all of those things in the 70s before they were before cable, and they were funneled into cable. It was a whole, we've talked about the Ormons on this podcast before. It is a world of cranks and hucksters and true believers and mondo humanity that is it's the traveling carnival of American culture that I am deeply, deeply in love with. The man's name is Gary Rhodes. How are you, Gary?
Wonderful. So glad to finally be here with you.
I know it is alarming that I've never had you on. My wife bought me No Traveler Returns for Christmas like 2 years ago. And when I opened it up, she goes like, I don't know what it is, but I saw it on some website and I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know what it is. Some days I don't either.
But it was so funny because I was working on the TV show Ted, the Seth MacFarlane Teddy Bear show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was reading it, I had it on my desk. And there was another writer on the show named Aaron Lee, who I was just getting to know. And he walked into my office and he went, "Oh my God, can I borrow that when you're done?" And I was like, "Oh, a fellow traveler." And now he's one of my closest friends.
Oh, excellent.
It's a little, it's like a secret handshake.
Yeah, the Lugosi thing gets you in many secret doors, I think.
It really does. Much more so than Karloff. He was just, he's a much more fascinating figure. There are these duos.
Yeah.
That I was in the other interview of this episode of the podcast is Mark Frost, who was in one of those relationships. It's like Lennon-McCartney. And everybody looks to John Lennon, and then there's McCartney that makes the trains run. Lynch and Frost. David Lynch got all of the press, but Mark Frost was a co-equal partner in that endeavor. Karloff and Lugosi. Boris Karloff was the biggest star, but Bill Lugosi is by far the more fascinating character.
Yeah, and had I think the legacy lives longer, larger, looms larger, his shadow now than Karloff's. I think there's a lot more interest in Lugosi in recent decades than Karloff.
Is it
even though it used to be the other way around, of course.
Is it because his life was tragic?
I believe that's a big part of it. I believe the Ed Wood period, of course, and his tragic drug addiction. That period, I think, of course, it interests a lot of people. I think vampires continue to be endlessly popular, seems to me. And so that's, I think, another reason because...
Dracula is a more fascinating character than Frankenstein.
Yes.
And I think that, his drug addiction and the here's a weird analogy. Like Nixon, he went to the top and he fell to the bottom and he didn't let it destroy him. And I think people admire that and see themselves in that. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yes. And Dracula, this is one silly thing I wrote once in some book somewhere, sometime. I wrote something like, during his lifetime, Bela Lugosi dressed as Dracula. After his death, Dracula dresses like Lugosi, which is basically, that every Count Chocula, even Christopher Lee, Count Von Count on Sesame Street. There's Kit Kat commercials, even last Halloween where somebody's doing the Lugosi shtick.
Right.
And so it does seem very long lasting in that way. Dracula never dies, he said. And it seems like he was right.
Well, this is the fastest we've ever gotten to a Count Chocula reference on this podcast.
Right.
But it's also weird in that Count Chocula does not have African American features. He looks like Fred Astaire.
Yes.
That is so true. And here's another one. This is so inside baseball that when people do Frankenstein, when you're at a party and somebody does Frankenstein, they're doing Bela Lugosi's Frankenstein from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, the blind, arms out. That's not what Karloff did.
Oh, no. It's much more Lugosi, maybe a bit of Glenn Strange for sure.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It's funny. It's they're shared histories, but then the different legacies. Very fascinating.
Very fascinating. Well, I want to go back to before we work up to Weird Documentary, which it's so great. There's so much there. I did want to talk for a minute about horror at the drive-in and use that as a way to how did you get involved in this world? What your PhD? Where did this all come from for you?
Well, I think certainly with the horror as well as classic movies in general. It was certainly my parents. My mother grew up as a shock theater fan in the late 50s. And so I grew up with that on TV and being encouraged to watch it, loving it, the horror film magazines and all of that. Thankfully, my parents didn't discourage it like some kids' parents used to do, don't watch that. So I was fortunate there.
I had the same mother, by the way.
Oh, well, wonderful. Yeah, the brother from the other from a different mother. Yeah. No, I love it because, you know, it was very much encouraged, and she would buy me the horror comics and of course Famous Monsters of Filmland. And I think that's what really made me go from just being a young kid fan to this becoming my life even now. And that's Forrest Ackerman. I met him when I was 13, accidentally, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I'll share more details if you like, but I accidentally met him. We became fast friends. Within a small number of months, I was staying with him in LA at the quote Acker Mansion.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was my first agent. So he got me publishing in Film Facts when I was 15. Film Facts that just ended its run about a year ago.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know it ended.
Yeah, sadly, Mike Stein ended it, but it had a run of from the early mid 80s.
Yeah, glorious.
Mid 80s. And so
I didn't know it ended.
Yeah. Before he got me that gig and some others, and through him, I met everybody, Robert Bloch, Ray Bradbury. And then all of a sudden I was up and running.
And so how did you meet Forrest Ackerman? How did that all, he was, I've talked about this before. He was very important.
Yes.
To kids, because what he said was, I'm an adult and I'm into this stuff and it's great.
Yes.
You're not weird. You're great. And that was very important because it's hard to envision before the internet, like nowadays, everybody that's into whatever you're into, you can find each other on the internet. Furries have probably existed for eons, but I'm sure everyone thought, well, I'm the only guy. No, there's tons of you. You just,
right.
You needed Reddit or whatever you used to meet. And now, and so before all that, Famous Monsters was like an island that everybody could sail to, and then you could go, oh, you're here too. Oh, you're here. Oh, you know him. Great.
Yeah.
We're all the same thing.
Yeah.
Very
and that
important.
was before the nerd culture kind of got hip. I mean, at a given point a good bit after I was in high school, for sure. The nerd thing kind of became kind of a hip thing. Back then, it wasn't. It was a crazy story. I'm from Oklahoma, and I was about 12 or 13. I was in Tulsa with my mother, father, and sister. My father had to go see a friend. We were at the Doubletree Hotel, and we were hanging out in the lobby area waiting for my father to return. And this fellow in a leisure suit walks up to the desk, brown leisure suit, of course, tan, and he
dressed like Steve Austin.
And he never gave it up. Never say die, right?
Although Steve Austin wore a leisure suit with a turtleneck, and Forey wore it with a Hawaiian shirt.
Absolutely. So it was quite an interesting look. And I noticed him, and I knew who he was. And I said to my mother and sister, "Well, that's Forrest Ackerman over there." And they said, first, who is he? And then secondly, why would he be in Oklahoma? You're crazy. You're out of your mind. And I kept staring at him, and then he left the reception desk and went up in the elevator. And so after a few minutes, thinking he may have gotten to his room, I was a shy kid, but I mustered as much strength and courage as I could, went up to the reception desk as if I was asking for an old friend, and I said, "Could you please connect me to the room of Forrest J. Ackerman?" And Wendy, who I got to know, his wife, Wendane, she answered. And of course, this Germanic voice to a little 12-year-old Oklahoma kid, and I didn't know if it was the right room or anything. She passed me over to Forey. Within a few minutes, he was back in the lobby, and he spent, I think, 3 or 4 hours with us that night. And in fact, my father he got back with a VHS camera he had in the car and filmed half of it. And so Forey fell for my family. He fell for me, and the rest was history. It was a cosmic.
What was he doing in Oklahoma? And he had nothing to do that night, so he just hung out with you guys.
It was a Sunday in the summer. So, and he had just finished at a Tulsa sci-fi convention that I was completely unaware was happening.
Right.
So that's why he was there.
Right.
The convention ended at whatever point on Sunday afternoon. So he did have the evening free. And Wendy always joked about that later because she's like, he went downstairs for 5 minutes to sign an autograph, and it's 4 hours later before I see my husband back up here again, So that was like whatever, luck, fate, chance.
What a great story. What a great, crazy story.
Yeah, it was a crazy story. And like I say, within a few months, I was staying with him at the Acker Mansion, and he ended up later dedicating one of his books to me. We were good buddies until he passed away. I lost a bit of touch with him through the years because I was living in Ireland for about 14 years. But but a great pal and a great inspiration.
Yeah, he had an interesting life in his later, because I met him at the Acker Mansion, and then I met him at the Mini Mansion, and I'd see him around at conventions and things like that. And then he went through all the Ray Ferry of it all, and we don't get into all that, but what a nightmare.
Incredible impact, incredible person. Unfortunately, he was beset with the bad luck of some of the business people he dealt with.
Yeah,
fortunately, but
he did, like, all of these people, like all of Lucas, Spielberg, all these people were famous monsters, raised on famous monsters.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he also was friends with Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov and Ed Wood. Like, what a Rolodex that guy had. He was friends with Asimov and Ed Wood.
Yeah, right. Yeah, both ends of the spectrum. Yeah. So
and Heidi Saha.
Yeah, right. But anyway, so that's kind of how I got into this, and then studying film history, publishing about it, books, documentary films. That kind of became my life in my 20s. And graduate school, and then here I am with gray hair and doing the same thing.
Sure. Where did you? Why did you end up in Ireland? How did you end up in Ireland? Were you teaching?
I always had a passion. It was much less than horror and these kinds of films. I always had a bit of a passion for Irish culture, James Joyce, the music, and by the time I was in high school,
are you Irish? Is Rhodes Irish?
No, I'm actually mainly Cherokee.
Yeah, you're a Native American.
Yeah, Native American. Now, there was some Irish on my father's one side of the family, but in the 80s when I was in high school, all of a sudden there was an Irish thing happening in American culture. There was My Left Foot. There was all of a sudden there was, Irish film was making an imprint. Irish music through U2 was just starting.
Riverdance.
Oh, you bet. Riverdance was huge. And then by the 90s, when I was in graduate school, the Cranberries and some of that, the Irish film business took off.
What year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 90.
Oh, okay. So I'm older than you are.
Yeah, I graduated in 90. And so at a given
point...
You
went gray early.
I went gray early, yeah. In fact, I was pretty darn gray by 40, I get. And, I've always thought about, if I just did a little bit a day, you wouldn't ever notice the Grecian formula, it'll sneak up on you. You'll think you must always have been black hair.
I have weird genes.
Yeah.
And because I graduated, I'm older. I graduated in 82.
Yeah. My sister's age. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just started to go gray.
Yeah.
Around now. And my dad is 95.
Yeah.
And he's got gray hair, but he's got all his hair.
Yeah.
And
God bless him. Yeah.
He only recently stopped driving, and it's just like,
that's amazing.
We crack late because we are Irish, and we had to keep working, so we can't die. We've got to get out there in the bog.
Right. Well, I was in love with all of that, and the Irish film industry became a bigger and bigger deal, and I was getting deep into it and connections there, thanks to the emergence of the internet we were just talking about. And then I found myself moving there in 2005, married to an Irish woman, and I was there for 14 years, working in film, but also teaching film studies, film history at the Queen's University in the north of Ireland. So
what city were you in?
Belfast.
Okay.
But it's small enough, as you can. Yep. I mean, 2 hours to Dublin, 2 hours to anywhere, practically.
Right. And it's so beautiful.
I miss it. It's the people, the weather, the food. I don't know if you're a black pudding guy, but I missed it badly.
Pub food is the greatest food in the world.
Yes, absolutely, and the pub life.
Yeah. And they'll let you just have your dog in there.
Yeah, and it's or a baby or a little kid. It's the great meeting place.
So, they do it right.
But
they do it right. Well, but so this is a good segue, because you are more American than I am. You're indigenous, and there is something so there's a very specific kind of culture in America that is dedicated to the worlds that you are writing about in Weird Geometry and Horror at the Drive-In. There's a great, both are sort of Midwestern carny, and hey man, those people run our country now.
Carnival Barker is
Carnival con men. I mean, they are not his base, they are his marks. And so where did Horror at the Drive-In essays in popular Americana come from? Was that something that came from not being in America?
No, that was actually something I did shortly before I left. I was already teaching film as an assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma, and I was teaching classes like history of the horror film, history of science fiction film, and I wanted to do a course on the history on drive-in movies and theaters. Right. And one of our classes was actually held at a still going operational drive-in theater. Right. And I would bring in drive-in theater filmmaker types that were buddies of mine from LA to guest speak, or actors, Robert Clark, different people, David Durston, Jack Hill, and it was great. So, but I guess my writing is kind of weird in that I suppose a lot of what I do, like Weird Geometry or Film Facts or magazines, is for popular audiences, and I'm really trying to, write for everyday folks like me that are film buffs. Some of the other stuff is very kind of academic, dry, scholarly stuff, right? That can be a little alienating or not fun, dry, whatever, like a textbook. And that's kind of what Horror at the Drive-In was. But that was, to me, part of this slow evolution of, this will maybe matter to a few people, but it matters to me, the slow evolution of academics and scholars, actual professors at actual universities taking horror and horror films seriously. Right. Finally, after they had been so looked down upon, for decades. So to me, that was kind of, and I also co-founded Horror Studies, which is an academic journal, the first on horror. So it was kind of about like, can we finally get a bit of critical acceptance, particularly at the, the ivory tower for that which has so often been disdained,
The thing about horror as a genre is it's, on the one hand, it's a perfect stalking horse in that you can tell any story. And you can use it as a way to tell difficult stories. But also because it is the appeal of the movie is the emotions it evokes. You don't need a star. You're selling the effect of the film. So they're easy to make, they're cheap to make, and people still go. It's like heavy metal. It's like we're selling an emotion here, and it's easy to do. It's primal, it's basic, and you're gonna love it. And so in that regard, they also can be sold internationally because again, you're selling an emotion. You're not selling a star. Yes. When horror movies are built around stars, like when an A-list star decides to like lower themselves and make a horror movie, never kind of works.
No. Sometimes it's better that we don't actually know who the people are.
Yeah, it's
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. I know people like it, but I don't think World War Z is a great. I'd rather watch 28 Days Later, where I didn't know anybody in it.
Absolutely. Or even some old Lucio Fulci or or Romero. No, I agree completely. Stuff. But to me, I think, you really go back, this is me as the historian, but, horror films and comedy films both start in the 1890s with the origins of cinema. And they really have been, certainly in America, the two most consistently popular genres over the decades, where other things, Westerns, musicals, war movies, these things come and go in varying degrees. And sci-fi, has its ups and downs, and I think it's probably exactly what you're talking about with horror as well as comedy, that they're both so guttural, so emotion-based, rather than, the intellectual storytelling or the selling of Hollywood stardom.
Yeah, and they do hold up that weird funhouse mirror to what's going on in the culture at the time. Let's talk about drive-ins practically. Where did the drive-in movie come from and why? Because I worked at one in high school. And
wonderful.
And the one that I worked at is still going. They evoke I don't want to say a lost Americana, but a changing Americana.
Yeah.
It gives me hope that there are many still here, and that they refuse to die.
Yes.
They refuse to die outright.
Yeah. Yeah. And thankfully there are still some, and, some saw a little bit of bolstered attendance with COVID, of course.
Right.
The drive-in thing, it's fascinating because, at the end of World War II, there were less than 100 in America. By the end of the 1950s, within about 15 years, there were 5,000, actually over 5,000. So It was this huge post-war boom. And of course, they took advantage of people, young couples moving to the suburbs, cheap land in the suburbs, then cheap at least, for the kind of geography that a drive-in needs.
And car culture.
Car culture. I mean, this is, Will Rogers once said, we'd be the only country that would drive ourselves to the poorhouse. I mean, let's just deny the functional use of a car, which is to go from place A to B and just sit in it for hours watching a movie, so it is truly so American. And the ability to not only watch the movie, but to, everything from get out of cars and gather near the concessions, talk with friends, gather in ways that sometimes teenagers had a hard time doing in other parts of a city or town, sneaking in the trunk. Certainly the back seat explorations, there was so much to these. I mean, even pizza, while well known in some parts of America, in places like the South and Midwest, it was really the drive-in concessions that really helped establish pizza.
You're kidding me.
No, it was the concessions, including in places like Oklahoma and the South, where there had never really been much in the way of Italian-American communities. And of course, we're talking about before that, no TV, basically, no people not really watching pizza on TV commercials or chain restaurants like Pizza Hut. So the drive-in does all of these wonderful things. And, I love every bit of it.
So when did pizza come in?
Well, at the drive-in, obviously pizza would have been here long before that, and I don't want anybody to mistake what I'm saying. It would have been long before that at Italian restaurants in so many wonderful places, including, the New England area, so many great places, New York City, otherwise, But for a lot of America, there wasn't that much of an Italian-American presence. And so in the 50s, when concessions became so much a part of the revenue driving movie theaters, hot dogs, pizza, cheap popcorn, obviously, cheap food to make. I mean, pizza always has been, especially if it's just, bog standard American style. It was one of the many things that kind of came out of the drive-in experience, for a lot of people, including my parents. The first time they had ever heard of pizza was at a drive-in movie theater in Oklahoma. So it did all of these things. And so I love them, truly. And I hope to be at one in the next week. My wife and I will be going.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's one in Oklahoma, isn't there?
There's still maybe as many as 5.
Yeah.
Tulsa still has one brilliant one that was one of the 2 screens in a V shape where you could watch one film or the other, take your pick, kind of a twin. They're still around, not as many as we'd like, but some are fighting the good fight till the end.
Yeah, there's a couple here. There was one here that just closed that was heaven on earth. It was called the Mission Tiki, and it was about an hour away, and it was 4 screens, Tiki themed.
Oh, wow.
And they sold the land because, we'll make more of this quarter by destroying this beautiful thing.
Yeah, goodness. No, I wish I had.
No, I don't know but the Mahoning Drive-In in Pennsylvania has not only is it a drive-in, but it's like a curated drive-in, and they have theme nights and
wonderful.
They just did they did Planet of the Apes marathon, and they said, do you want to come out? And I was just like, God bless you.
No, it's just wonderful. It's a great part of America, and I'm glad there's still some vestiges of it.
Yeah, and in the 50s, and I guess sometimes they got A movies, but there was also just drive-in fare, and the horror films were reflecting what was going on, the Cold War, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, and that was a question you asked about the drive-in movies themselves, and they did get the occasional A pictures, but by the late 40s, early 50s, there was certainly a real push among the studios to not release their films to drive-ins, despite a Supreme Court case in 1948. So the mom and pops, or even the small chains, they had a hard time getting some of the A pictures, and that's where really people like Sam Arkoff and Corman and all the rest come in, was to fulfill the need for product on the screen.
Right.
And of course, product that teenagers would want to watch as they ended up taking over the drive-ins and stuff.
Yeah. And when you look at, like, if you go on newspapers.com and look at the old movie listings, the drive-ins were moved. The movies at the drive-ins were not the movies that you would watch.
Or
I even heard of today. It was a lot of Russ Meyer stuff or what have you.
Right.
And it was like sort of traveling carnivals. It was four-walling, especially down south.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the world of weird-gementaries. I'm going to read something from the introduction of the book. At some point in the 1960s, the seeming polar opposition of spaced-out youth counterculture and the Bible Belt's conservative Christian agenda somehow collided and fused together. In the netherworld, we only read about in paperbacks by Frank Edwards or Hans Holzer in magazines like Argosy, or things like the National Enquirer and the Weekly World News. It started with 2001 and the public and Chariots of the Gods, where the left and the right collided in this weird culture that I would describe as the Art Bell of it all.
Yes.
And it was talk about genre. It was an entire genre of films, sort of purportedly real documentaries, and topics were things like Bigfoot, ancient aliens, UFOs, suspect archaeology, political conspiracies, life after death experiences, possession, the occult, the Bermuda Triangle, faith healing, psychic surgery, paranormal phenomena, but none of the sex stuff like sex magic, because a lot of these were made by Mormons.
Yes. And almost all of them got G ratings. And so the whole family could go. I actually went to a couple of theaters with my parents.
I did too.
I did too. So they were very much aimed at getting general audiences, so everybody could go. And it's a fascinating form. I recall the Independent Film Journal, I think it was called, in '78, said, these films are strange. They're a weird hybrid. They use the word hybrid form of, documentary, docudrama, yada, yada. So that's even why I came up with this. I guess every writer likes to make up words, the term weird-umentary, just to try and say these are different than the other kinds of films, including like the Mondo films of the 60s,
like Mondo Cane and
exactly, like those, which so often little kids couldn't go to, were much more explicit graphically. This was its own kind of genre, and I really think it starts at the end of the 60s, and it ends in the way I'm writing about it in the book. It really ends in the early 80s with the release. Warner Brothers, of all people, released The Man Who Saw Tomorrow, the Nostradamus documentary with Orson Welles, on-camera host. Most of these had famous on-camera hosts.
Sure.
And so it's kind of bounded by those two eras, those 2 years. These shows, look, Ancient Aliens are still on, etc. This is before cable is really a mainstay in people's homes. This is largely a theatrical phenomenon.
Yeah, for people who don't recall or remember, if you watch Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, which is just another way of saying if you've ever been in a hotel, before cable, these things were made as theatrical documentaries and were road showed around the country. The first one that I was aware of, I know Chariots of the Gods was one, but In Search of Noah's Ark was the big one that I remember.
I saw that with my parents and sisters, and we were flabbergasted, and of course later it turned out that some of the alleged rediscovery artifacts and archaeology and so forth was all fake.
Right.
And then there were the cheap, low budget recreations of Noah himself, and everything.
But this was a documentary made by Sun Classic Pictures, which was a Mormon outfit.
Yes.
And
Utah-based. Yeah.
Utah-based, purported to, they found, I don't know, it was in the Himalayas or something. They found Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
And it proved the Bible story. By the way, the least conceivable Bible story, the Noah's Ark, and they made a little fake documentary about it, and I'm assuming it made no pun intended, a goddamn fortune.
Those films did surprisingly make a lot of money, which I think is why there was such a proliferation of them, is they were cheap to do. Often your biggest cost was getting a name on-screen host, the Rod Serling, the John Carradine, the Peter Graves, so many others. Shatner, of course. I mean, Shatner did his first one in 1976 called Mysteries of the Gods.
Right.
50 years later, thank God, he's still doing those shows.
God bless him.
With The Unexplained, his show on Discovery is covering these same issues now 50 years later. But it was theatrical. It was before cable, before home video. Most of us had home video. They were theatrical. They had these on-camera hosts, usually sometimes associated with kind of strange things, horror, etc., like Serling.
Yeah, or Nimoy on television.
Nimoy, of course, absolutely, Shatner. So
did the show In Search Of come from the documentaries, or was that just the?
Yes, it did. Title? It did. In fact, one of the key people making those documentaries outside of the Mormon group you mentioned was a fellow named Alan Landsberg, a TV producer named Alan Landsberg, and he actually produces some really fascinating ones in the early 70s. And then he ends up founding the In Search Of TV series, with the great ...
Yeah.
At the Ellipsis and Leonard Nimoy. So, there were a handful of people that were really instrumental in these, but there was a lot of money to be had because you paid for the one kind of on-camera host, and maybe you had some kind of low-speed recreations in most of them, the fictionalized dramatizations, whatever you want to say, of, Bermuda Triangle disappearances and so forth.
Yeah. What were the big, there were several topics that were, there was the sort of the insert, there was a lot of Bible stuff. There was In Search Of the Real Jesus, In Search of the Bible stuff was huge. Then the Bible as a book being written by people from outer space was another one, the sort of Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Daniken world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ancient aliens. And that was the Rod Serling's corner of it. Picking up a check. And then there was Bigfoot.
Yes. Yeah. So there's actually kind of emerged, I think, over time, because there's so many of them, kind of subgenres, so to speak, like ancient aliens would be one. There were a lot about UFOs, like more modern encounters. There were some about the paranormal, psychokinesis, bending spoons, Uri Geller, all of that.
Right.
There were some that were about prophecies, like end times prophecies, both Christian, Nostradamus, etc. Some were about what else? Mysterious monsters. So you Bigfoot, but also his friends, the Abominable Snowman and Loch Ness Monster, of course. So you end up with about 5 or 6 subgenres here. Speculative history, I call one of them.
Right.
Because, there were some like, about Abraham. There was one about Abraham Lincoln that the Mormons made.
You're talking about 1977's The Lincoln Conspiracy.
Absolutely. He obviously was assassinated, but a nod to maybe interest in the JFK assassination. Maybe there was a conspiracy around. Maybe it was more than just John Wilkes, Harvey Oswald Booth.
Yeah. But what's interesting is, yes, there was a conspiracy. They were caught and hanged.
Yes, I know. But it's fascinating though, because the folks in Utah, the Sun Classic folks, were responsible for most of the biggest share of more than any other group. And they were working out of Utah. They made a lot of money off these films, and they did a few things though that I think were really smart. They would take surveys, including at shopping malls, with the topics they were thinking about doing as films. And then they would, in other words, find out based upon
market
research in advance. Then when they would four-wall them, meaning they'd go into towns, rent theaters, show the films themselves, make as much as they could, again, carnival style, like you say, they would do things like look at weather forecasts way in advance and so forth to see that they would be there not during the worst storm or so forth. I mean, they did a lot of business things, in other words, very well. And they did quite well off of those, as well as some of the other things they made. They were, if anybody remembers the old Grizzly Adams TV show, they made those as well, so.
And because what they thought was, and I'm telling you about your own book, but for the benefit of our listening audience, it did come from a genuine thing. Like, there's no more films where the entire family goes. It's either kids' movies, and you drop the kids off, or old people movies and the grandparents go. But rated G, there were no rated G movies that had an adult interest.
Yes. And they captured it. That was another part, I think, of the brilliance of these films.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you're talking about, in large measure, the kind of new Hollywood Godfather films, some of them rated R now, like for adults only, or you go see The Rescuers like I did as a little kid, Disney and, cartoons. So it did bridge that gap. And so I still have a great affection for these films because most of them aren't really that good. Maybe most of them never were, but they're charming. I think they have a great nostalgia for them. I love the memories I had as seeing them as a kid.
Yeah, they're so of their time, and they were pre-internet alt culture, counterculture. Art Bell took that mantle, and anything unusual he championed. And like Art Bell, didn't care if it was real or not.
No, I mean, it seems to me, and I write about this in the book, it seems to me the big point of these films were really to ask the question, what if, and in a period where a lot more people were still asking, maybe there is the telekinesis or psychokinesis. Maybe you really can bend a spoon. I think a lot of people were, even at universities we were talking about, were more open to having paranormal studies and so forth.
Yeah.
That's kind of gone now in large measure, and scientific circles would really look down upon such pursuits.
Well, the CIA had remote viewing, and
the men
who talked to goats.
Absolutely. And so it seems like there really was that era of let's ask the question, what if? Because maybe the answer will be yes, there is something out there. Whether paranormal or alien life or what have you.
Yeah, the way I look at all of that is, to me, it is mathematically unfeasible to think that there's nothing out there.
Yes.
But that's all that's it.
That's all I've got to.
Yeah, can't be, it can't be, we can't know everything right at this moment.
Absolutely. And that I think is part of the extreme arrogance of modern academia, particularly in the hard sciences.
I think it's the extreme arrogance of Homo sapiens. I'd bring it.
Probably so.
Yeah. I would take it a little farther back.
There you go.
Yeah, but I take your point. To that end, there were so many in like 76 to 82. Was sort of the heyday of these things. There's so many of them. These are just some of the titles. Mysterious Monsters in Search of Bigfoot, The Legend of Loch Ness, Man-Beast, Myth or Monster, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, Primal Man, which was, I believe, a speculative miniseries. All of these things were in theaters.
Yeah.
There's a new documentary out apparently called Capturing Bigfoot. Have you heard about this?
I've just heard the title, but I haven't had the chance to look into it.
Well, supposedly, and this comes from my friendly Bigfoot expert, Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes, wonderful.
Who made a found footage Bigfoot horror film called Willow Creek.
I love it. I'll always maintain that his masterpiece is Shakes the Clown, which is one of the unsung. That's one of the unsung comedy classics. But I loved the Bigfoot film. It was really effective, very effective. claustrophobic at times too. Wonderfully so.
It's a great. He's an underrated director. But he says, I haven't seen it, that it talks to Patterson Gimlin, the survivors, and you learn their personal story, and it was fake. And they say, this is where we made the suit, and it was fake.
Yes,
but whatever it is, and I haven't seen it yet, so I can't speak to it. But whatever it was that was going on in their lives, that when you see what they accomplished, you're happy at the end of the movie, like, good for those guys.
Yeah.
And I think the secret to a lot of that is, I know the Patterson Gimlin footage is fake.
Yes.
I still want there to be something.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's part of the ongoing joy I have in these films, because I thought that as a little kid, I hope Bigfoot's out there okay and nobody's going to shoot him. The Loch Ness Monster must be real. I had investment emotionally as a little kid in those, and still, have affection.
And the way that conspiracies work is like, the fact that the Patterson Gimlin footage is fake proves he's real, that they had to create a fake film.
Denying what the footage shows, but it's a tremendous accomplishment. I mean, I think there must be two home movies in American film history that of course are the home movies of all, the top two, and one's The Pruder and the other is Patterson Gimlin.
And how no one has done a mashup of those two movies is
I know exactly, right, because those are the two, I think, at the very top of the the chain.
And I think a lot of that comes from, and people want, and I think the core of the success of these films is that people want to believe that stuff.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, I think that was true then. And I think the ongoing cable shows were inundated with these programs on cable TV, recycling a lot of the same, the same stories. I think that's still true for a lot of people out there, and it's still exciting, fun stuff to talk about.
So UFOs sort of entered popular culture in the late 40s.
Right.
That's when it entered popular culture.
Yeah.
But the concept of UFOs being having visited us in ancient times and jump-started our culture.
Yeah.
Was that Chariots of the Gods? Was that Eric von Daniken? Where did that come from? Who originated that?
I think there had been some speculation certainly before von Daniken, but his book, released in 1968, the first edition German, is what makes that into a widespread cultural phenomenon in America and many parts of the globe. The millions of copies of his book sold. I quote at one point in the book from the Washington Post in 1972, and they mention at that early stage, because the book didn't come out in America in 68, it was a little thereafter for it to be translated here. By 72, the Washington Post is saying he's basically a cult figure, him and his ideas. So widespread had they become, So it became, and of course, we know he died recently. He had even had a kind of an Ancient Aliens theme park, later in life, literally, a Six Flags and 5 saucers or whatever it was, but so he's the one that certainly popularizes it. And his ideas make it here, not only in the documentary and the book, but very quickly some of these other films, including some made by Alan Landsberg that we were talking about earlier, where the idea of von Daniken is present, even if they don't always mention his name. Maybe they,
But I know that a lot of it had Rod Serling do the voiceover, and he had a lot of cred.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so it's like, well, he's not going to lend his voice to some, crackpot.
Right. Well, and of course, who better suited than him?
Perfect.
But then you get some wonderful people. There's the first really big 1970s Bermuda Triangle documentary was about 1972, and it was narrated by Vincent Price. So almost everybody got into the act at one point or another, if they were part of that kind of world of strange, let alone sci-fi horror directly, you know.
If there was someone whose photo you would see in You Axed for It.
Absolutely. Yes. I know that I know too well. Yes.
Yeah. You know,
so we axed for it and we got it.
But it is amazing. Talk for a minute about, so this guy, Landsberg, he was just a businessman.
He was a producer. He was a writer. Yeah. He was actually known as kind of something of a triple threat or more guy, because he was a great businessman, great producer, great writer. So he was directed some. He could almost do about everything. That's why he was, I think, respected in Hollywood at the time, maybe more than the actual products he was creating.
Sure. Talk a little bit about the Ormonds, because they are a really fascinating story.
Yeah, well, I'm fascinated by them. I used to speak with June years and years ago.
I have that huge book.
Yes,
the exotic ones.
The book and the box set are the DVD box set are fascinating stuff. I'm not an expert in that area. I was fascinated by them. Doing research on Bela Lugosi put me in touch with a lot of fascinating people, particularly with regard to his last years, because it wasn't just Ed Wood he was associated with. There were a lot of others, including the Ormonds, even though they didn't actually end up making a project. Of course, a lot of these things were planned and talked about, but not really.
He dealt with the Ormonds?
Yeah, they were going to do. In fact, there was going to be an Ed Wood project involving Ormond and involving Lugosi. So, it was kind of part of like Lugosi's, let's do everything we can, to make a buck. And Ed Wood, it seems to me, looking at everything, not to get off on a tangent, but that Ed Wood was not only making the films we know with Lugosi, et cetera, but it seems like the relationship was increasingly Lugosi getting more and more impatient for work that wasn't materializing, and Wood trying, as any producer probably would, everything under the sun to get a project off the ground. Yeah. And most of what was talked about, of course, never became Plan 9 because it was never made. It never got off at all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But the Ormonds were one of the many fascinating kind of, there's so many of these people in American history, from Kroger Babb, Drew Friedman, Harry Novak, that were fascinating kind of film forces off the books, off the Hollywood scene.
Right. If you've seen Ed Wood when he makes Glen or Glenda, those are the kind of movies the Ormonds had first made. They made movies about like frigidity and all these like vaguely sexual things, but under the guise of education, and titillation, and that drove people to the drive-in.
Yeah.
But then they started working with these Mormon financiers.
Yeah.
And they had to kind of Christian it up, or, or Christian financiers, whoever, religious, let's just say religious.
Yeah. And again, that many things come to mind, of course, including the great late, I only spoke with him once, the Reverend Lynn Lemon.
Yes.
And the involvement of Christian-backed money and Plan 9, of course, so.
Right.
So there is a lot of kind of curious connections and convergences that come together to make these some of these B, C grade movies back then, whether it's Wood or Ormond, and fascinating stuff.
It's interesting in that they're all different forms of carnival hucksterism. The Baptist Church of Beverly Hills is out to make a buck, and the Ormonds are out to make a buck, and Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi were out to make a buck. And they're all fishing in the same pond socioeconomically. So it would figure that they would all come together. And if you look at all of these films, the Bigfoot, the UFOs, and then you get Noah's Ark, and it's all right there. And that is exactly what they meant in the sense of like hippie counterculture and the religious Bible Belt culture colliding into this sort of spiritual.
Although, go ahead.
Did but didn't like people like the Baptists, and they must have been very averse to the ancient aliens concept because it's so innately anti-Christian.
Well, I think there's a few mitigating factors, both in the particular and larger than that. In the particular, I would say, of course, Jimmy Carter, quite a devout Christian man, saw a UFO famously, and Billy Graham.
Just when you thought you couldn't love him more.
Exactly. And the Reverend Billy Graham was asked this question in the 1970s, maybe even in the 60s, but I think by the 70s, and said, well, it's possible it was part of God's plan or so forth. So I think there were those kind of tweaks. But then the larger thing to me is something like 2001, A Space Odyssey, which comes out the same year as we were saying as Chariots of the Gods, 1968. And it's quite this, it's one of my favorite films, incredibly opaque narratively, right? And at the end, most of us presume beyond the Stargate, what has led everything to that point in evolution in the Star Child would be aliens, even though they're not really seen per se.
Right.
But the Catholic Legion of Decency, of course, gave its stamp of approval on 2001 A Space Odyssey, saying all good Catholics should go see it because they believed God was behind Stargate in their mind, because it allowed for both. And then Kubrick, I think, beautifully in a Playboy interview said, when he was asked about that disparity, he said, well, wouldn't they be the same? In other words, if somebody was capable of doing all that, like an alien life form, they would basically be a god to us because they'd be so far advanced.
I actually have that Playboy interview.
Yeah.
And it's he had a very interesting thing. He said to Stephen King that he thought that ghost stories were, and all horror stories were innately optimistic.
I love that quote.
Because they prove that there's something beyond death.
Yes. As an obsessive Shining fan, that's a quote that stuck with me, for years.
And I think King's reaction was, "What are you talking about?"
That's a fascinating thing. But I mean, The Shining, I think, has proven its mettle.
One of those, Well, another
film,
fascination,
of course.
Another fascination of mine is films that transcend their release.
Yes, and that talk about having an afterlife truly of its own is everything from the Room 237 stuff, documentaries, ongoing kind of speculation and theories. It seems like they've actually now surpassed those surrounding 2001, even though it's arguably the more mystifying narrative.
It is true, and there are those things that just stick. And for some reason, the other interview is with Mark Frost, and Twin Peaks is a great example of it just doesn't go away. It grows. And I said this to Mark. There's much more longevity and fascination and online discussions about Twin Peaks than the X-Files, which is ostensibly user-friendly Twin Peaks, you could say. To paint with a very broad brush.
Right.
X-Files is sort of the Boris Karloff to Twin Peaks Bela Lugosi.
There we go.
There's a lot. And, The Shining, Blade Runner, and The Thing both came out on the same day, both panned, both considered bombs. And both, I think, have had a much longer shelf life than the film that destroyed them both, which was E.T. Which is very much, I think, a museum piece.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it seemed, to my mind, a little saccharine at the time, and now it certainly, in retrospect, seems dated. But that's the fascinating thing. So many
and
of the
those films don't, and Blade Runner and The Thing don't. And what's interesting is because Blade Runner and The Thing are both 70s movies. And E.T. is an 80s movie.
Yeah, absolutely. No, truer words never spoken.
Yeah.
I mean, E.T. is popcorn blockbuster for the masses, almost pre-programmed. Happy ending, where Blade Runner and The Thing do seem more new Hollywood than the blockbuster era. But I think
say what you want about what that says about us as a people, but those nihilistic movies are the ones that have a shelf life.
Same
with Apocalypse Now.
Absolutely, or even back to Lugosi's Dracula, or some of the horror films of the 30s, for example, that were looked down upon at the time. Not everybody, but many of us still watch those films, Monster Kids, old horror films. You look at what was winning Academy Awards those years in the 30s, and most people would have never heard of the film. Some of them are a real slog to sit through.
Yeah.
Stars that are totally forgotten, as opposed to somebody like Lugosi, who's still on T-shirts and bumper stickers and lunchbox.
Yeah. A film that you wrote about that is still incredibly effective, White Zombie.
Oh, yeah. That would talk about a long kind of life after life. 1932, the first feature-length zombie film ever made. It's cashing in on the Dracula Frankenstein success and that first Universal cycle.
Right.
But White Zombie was independently made. It was the first independent horror film of the type we so often think of now, whether it would be, Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch, Night of the Living Dead. Huge success, panned by critics, but it really institutes the zombie as a kind of subgenre of American horror that it still is. It obviously changes over the years, but I mean, for that matter, look at somebody like Rob Zombie. His first band was called White Zombie. There's still an ongoing fascination, not only with, of course, zombies, but White Zombie itself. There's still toys, dolls, action figures made of that Lugosi character.
And the soundtrack that Rob Zombie produced, is fantastic.
Absolutely amazing. And it was one of those films I saw. I didn't actually get to see it when I was a little kid, but I'd see the pictures in Famous Monsters, and you had to wonder what the film was about and lust almost to see it. And then finally I saw it around the age of 12, and it lived up even maybe beyond its promise to me. And so, I ended up writing a whole book about the film because I'm just, I remain entranced with that one.
If you haven't seen it, White Zombie is absolutely worth seeing. It's one of Lugosi's, and Lugosi gets a bad rap as being a bad actor. He's not a bad guy. He's not a bad actor. He was a great actor that made some bad films.
Yes.
But White Zombie and specifically Son of Frankenstein, he steals both movies.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah.
When he's on screen, he's who you're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he had a lot of talents, I think, that aren't always well remembered. I agree completely about those films. I also think when he had the chance and when he was comfortable with the script and a little time, I think sometimes his comic timing could be rather great as well. If you watch a film like The Gorilla, 1939, he has this kind of throwaway part as a butler. It's a horror comedy. But some of his exchanges with the Ritz brothers, some of the comic timing in a few of those horror comedies, extremely good. So he was a much better actor than he was given credit for in America.
I just went to see with sort of movie nerd group. We all went to see Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, which was playing at the Beverly Cinema. And And the Ape Man was also played. He, God bless him, he would do anything.
Yeah.
And he always gave it everything he had, which is, I think, also a part of his appeal is, and I don't even think it's conscious with a lot of people.
Yeah.
He would do garbage and give it everything he had.
Absolutely.
And I think people appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah. No, the intensity factor is never below 10.
I think that's why Elvis had such a longevity, because even at the end, when he was not in the best of shape, he lived to be on stage.
Yeah.
He never phoned it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And where some of the others did, in fact, not to knock him because I love him, but arguably Karloff did that sometimes later in his career, some of the Spanish co-production or Mexican co-productions or so forth, that he doesn't seem like he's giving everything. He's just kind of walking through it.
He had, there's a very mid-period Michael Caine sense of,
Yeah.
Jaws the Revenge era Michael Caine.
Right. Exactly.
It is great to know that all of these things, including the weird geometry, they continue in different forms.
Yeah.
The weird geometries are all over your channel guide.
Yeah.
In different forms.
Oh, and providing a good moment career-wise, certainly working for, everybody from not just Shatner, but so many, Danny Trejo, Lawrence Fishburne, several people are hosting these types of shows on Discovery now. The sheer number of them alone kind of attests to the ongoing, I think, fascination.
Yeah. And it shows, it gives the, that people want to believe there's more going on than what they see. That can be exploited.
Yes.
Here's QAnon is a great example of people that want to believe crazy shit. And it's not, their powers are not used for good.
Yes.
The fact that some of the things that they did believe did turn out to be true is even harder to take. No, there actually is a lot of weird, creepy sex shit going on in elite circles.
Yes.
The people that you want to fight it happen to be the people that are also in it. So that's why you have to work that out for yourself. Then people think, and these conspiracies are just endless, endless rabbit holes that you can fall down and stay in.
Yeah. No, absolutely. JFK assassination, there's so many of them. A good buddy of mine, Robert Guffey, wrote a great book called Cryptoscatology, the study of secret shit is what it would translate into, scatology. The cryptoscatology. Because he kind of investigates what we're talking about.
Like Bigfoot guano? Is that what we're talking about?
Some of the other things. He's actually written a great deal of expose stuff on QAnon. And it is that rabbit hole thing. Like there becomes that moment of devotion to the subject, belief in it, that it becomes truly unshakable, right? That even if the quote Q said this is all made up, there still is this, I don't care. Or we said it about Patterson Gimlin, right? That even if they say this is fake, well, then that still doesn't necessarily mean people.
The fact that you said it's fake proves to me that it's real.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, maybe that's a double bluff.
You must be working on something now. You have to be. You're
productive. Always too many things. But my next book that will be published is actually finished. It'll come out in the spring. It's called Scalped: The Cultural History of an American Horror Story. And I look at how the scalping trope through fiction, American literature, American newspapers, often with incorrect stories, through movies, comic books, etc., has been used as a way to frame Native Americans in the minds of Americans and make them into the other, yada, yada, yada. Maybe more fun, though, is a book I'm finishing now. That's a book about Carnival of Souls, one of my other favorite films. And,
oh my God. That is one of my favorite films as well. I'm on the Criterion disc.
Yes, I knew. And so I'm doing, it's one of the scripts from The Crypt. I think you had the Bride of the Monster, you said. So it's going to be one of those. And the personal papers of the writer and director, Herc Harvey and John Clifford, have finally become available at Kansas University, where they were donated. So I've been able to plumb the depths of all kinds of data and information that's not been known. So I that's another one of those films like White Zombie that it's just captured me and never let me go.
Where can people get Weird Geometry?
Well, it's available, I hope, at all fine bookstores. You can do the Amazon thing, but I'd much prefer somebody either go to their local bookstore, mom and pop, or even better yet, if somebody wants to be really nice, buy it from Feral House.
That's what I was going to say.
Press. They're an amazing press. If you look at their catalog, you'll end up wanting to buy 5 or 10 books.
Yeah. Is it feralhouse.com?
Feralhouse.com. They are an amazing press. They always have been, and they forge ahead wonderfully. I have to thank Christina and everybody at Feral House because they did an incredible favor to me in lots of ways on that book, particularly the lush paper, the glossy, the colors.
This book is
such an amazingly.
Is there a
beautiful job.
hardcover version of this?
There's not. I perhaps there will be, but they went all out on the color and everything. And so their support, you know, I've dealt with Feral House since I was in my teens. I was a research assistant for Rudy Gray on Nightmare of Ecstasy.
Go to feralhouse.com, FERAL house.com. The best people going. They are terrific.
Other podcasts reach for the sky. Dana Gould Hour.
We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley with Jake Posner behind the board. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Tom Kenny speaking.
I'm a DJ, I'm a DJ, I'm a person, I'm a person, I'm a singer, I love to sing and DJ. Boom! Peace out! Peace out! You want me? Peace out! Boom.